Hey guys, welcome back to Horsetooth Cinema, and today I'm going to be reviewing Knock at the Cabin, which is the new movie by M. Night Shyamalan. I, like most people, have a strange relationship with Shyamalan's films. I love a lot of his early work, and then I think a lot of the middle of his career, kind of like mid to late 2000s, or late 2000s all the way until like kind of the early 2010s, as some of the most bewildering disasters I've ever seen. I don't find all of those movies utterly terrible like some people do, but I do think that there's, in most of them, there's a really strange combination of like unintentional humor and also lofty pretensions in terms of what the film is going for. And the combination of those two things I don't much care for. Luckily, I really like the trend he's been on kind of, let's see, like 2015 and onwards, kind of in more recent years. He's gone back to making high concept, but not too highbrow genre films that are also emotionally sincere. And I'm very happy to say that Knock at the Cabin is another example of that. I personally really liked Shyamalan's last movie, Old. I can understand why people would have trouble with that movie and why a lot of people wouldn't like it. There's a lot of little things in it that are very off-putting, I would say, to a lot of general audiences, which I can totally understand. But Knock at the Cabin is his first movie in a long time, and probably a very long time, that I think average moviegoers will pretty much generally really like. The plot of Knock at the Cabin is, while vacationing at a remote cabin in the woods, a young girl and her parents are taken hostage by four armed strangers who demand that they make an unthinkable choice to avert the apocalypse. Confused, scared, and with limited access to the outside world, the family must decide what they believe before all is lost. So before I get into the review, I just want to mention a little funny observation I had. So right now I'm in a gap year sort of between my undergrad and doing my master's. And what I do at the moment is I am a grassroots organizer, like a canvasser for an environmental nonprofit. And I really love my work. But while watching this movie, I was thinking, I know what it's like to knock on the door of somebody's house and tell them that they need to make a decision to avert the apocalypse in the sense of climate change, and have the person, you know, basically tell you to fuck off in response. So I that aspect of the movie I thought was really funny and how I could relate to it. I want to start this review by saying that the movie looks absolutely gorgeous. There was a lot written that M. Night had used kind of older 90s thriller lenses to shoot this movie, and it really pays off. It creates kind of a Hitchcockian or like De Palma, Soderbergh, like weird voyeuristic sort of feeling to it. I also really like in the way that the film is shot, the way that they use zooms to reinforce information. It's a technique that for some reason to me feels a little bit old school in terms of a thriller. But yeah, I think it's used very effectively in terms of how, yeah, it reinforces information that's dealt out throughout the film. And I could go on and on about the filmmaking elements here, but you know, despite the fact that this is an apocalypse movie, it also is a very, you know, grounded one location thriller, which means that especially compared to the filmmaking, it'd be more obvious to the viewer that this is more of an acting showcase. And thankfully, I really love all of the acting in this movie, which isn't something you can always say about a new M. Night film. I mean, I liked Old a lot, but most of what I really liked about it was how he sort of dealt with this concept in a very literal and tangible way, as opposed to liking the performances in it. Because I do think some of the performances, kind of like The Happening, are a little bit strange. I wouldn't say they were as bad as that movie, but they still weren't great. Whereas Knock at the Cabin has so many great standout performances. One in particular was Kristen Cui, who plays the adopted daughter Wen. I believe the actress has very little experience. It might be her first movie, and it's also a very difficult role because one, she has to sort of portray the fear that somebody would experience in this scenario, but also she has to bring out that this character is wise beyond her years and might, you know, later in the film have the intelligence to sort of talk to her fathers about how to deal with this situation. But she really pulls it off. I mean, you really believe both of those things, that she is incredibly scared of what this scenario might bring for her family, but also that she is very wise and capable in terms of how to deal with it. But really, Dave Bautista is the heart and soul of this film. I think this is probably his best performance, and I hesitate to say that because I really like Dave Bautista as an actor. I think he's a really great sort of henchman type of character in Spectre. I really like his performance in Blade Runner 2049. He has a lot of like hidden pain even in that one scene. And of course, a lot of his comedic roles with like Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that are really great. And in this role, his character obviously is very, you know, he's a good person who has to do a very bad thing. So he is very morally conflicted about what exactly to do. So clearly he brings a lot of that hidden pain that his character had in that Blade Runner cameo. But also, you know, his character in the film is like a second grade teacher, and obviously, you know, he's talking to Wen, who's like a similar age of people he'd be teaching. So you know, he also has this sort of loving uncle, like teddy bear quality to him, which I think is those two things, that sort of hidden pain and that sort of uncle quality, really summarize his capabilities as an actor really well, and I think they're maximized here. And what's incredible is that you do really feel for his character, despite how awful of a thing he has to make this family do at some point in the movie. And I think the film handles this really well because it takes the audience less time to figure out that that Dave Bautista and his people are actually pretty, you know, sincere, and there's truth to what they're saying. It takes the characters longer to figure that out than it does take us, the audience, to figure it out, which I think really works in terms of how you end up viewing the Four Horsemen as they're kind of seen here. I think one of the most impressive things about this movie, though, is the tension in the narrative, because right from the get-go, as soon as the premise is introduced, that kind of mild spoilers, I guess, although this is written in the plot, you know, this family is going to have to sacrifice one of each other in order to avert the apocalypse. Right from the get-go, you know that with that scenario, there's basically two ways the movie can end. They either do that or they don't. And if they don't, they'll have to live with the consequences of that during the apocalypse. Despite the fact that you know that there's only two ways the movie can end, the movie is incredibly tense throughout. And leave it to M. Night, who I think is really, you know, one of our greatest thriller filmmakers working today, to, you know, create so much tension out of something that you can still kind of predict where it's going a little bit. And I think, like a lot of M. Night's work, it's also really impressive to see him pull so much sincere emotion out of what's on paper just a high concept B-movie story. I mean, you look at a movie like Signs, which is essentially just it's an alien invasion B-movie, but there really is so much, you know, inter-family personal drama weaved in with like the crisis of faith that Mel Gibson's character clearly is having throughout it. And I think there's a lot of that going on here. All of these characters, both the ones, you know, the family that has to make the decision, but also the people that are making them make the decision, are dealing with personal crises of both faith and morality in the face of these really unimaginable circumstances. If I have any issue with the film, it's probably the ending. I'm aware that the book that this is based on ends in a very ambiguous way. And I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of that in the version of this film. Although unlike a lot of people who have maybe read the book, I don't mind the way that Shyamalan decided to end this too much. A lot of people are making it out to be like one of those studio decisions where they're like, you know, audiences aren't going to want to see this if it doesn't end in a very conclusive, decisive way. But I don't think that's really what M. Night was trying to do with this. I think the way that he ends this, without spoiling what happens, he's genuinely interested in how the family would move on in this situation. That last scene of the film where I won't spoil who, but there's a couple characters sitting in a car and they turn on the radio. I don't know, I just think that felt very emotional to me, and it felt very sincere in that he wants to, in his adaptation of it, he wants to change the material to explore a different aspect of it, as opposed to wanting to change the intention of what the original material is trying to do or anything like that. But I think he's obviously very emotionally affected by the material, which is why he chose to adapt it. And, you know, any adaptation, you should probably take liberties with the source material. Otherwise, what's the point of adapting it? So I haven't read the book, and I don't think the ending is perfect or anything. And, you know, I do think it could have used a little bit more ambiguity to sort of keep the audience thinking after the fact. But I don't know, I was very affected by it. So overall, I really liked this movie. I think it's definitely in the upper end of Emilan's filmography, and I'm gonna give it 4 stars. Anyway, that's gonna do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, please like it down below and subscribe to the channel. I know I said in my last video that I'd be reviewing Infinity Pool next, but I just got around to doing this one first. But I have written my little script for Infinity Pool, so I will be reviewing that very soon, and I'll see you guys for the next one. See ya.